Do you have questions about life that you want answered? Well, you're in luck because so do I. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at some of the
Done.
best philosophical questions out there, and we're going to be attempting to answer them. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
Yeah, so this is exciting. We're going through another list, and we will post a link to the list down in the show notes
Yeah.
of some of the best philosophical questions. But me personally, I love doing this stuff because we get to see interesting questions, interesting answers, right?
Yeah, I like it too. And I also like too, this was like from like I don't know, like a conversation starter thing to get to know. So it's like they're fun and I don't know, I like questions like that because it makes you I don't know, sometimes they make you think about the world and stuff differently, which is always nice. Takes you
Hmm.
out of the moment. Yeah. Do you want to just go back and
Absolutely.
forth then today? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, so let's get into
All
it.
right. You want me to
I guess
start?
I'll start
You
because I
start. Go ahead, you
introduced the
start.
episode. Okay,
Take
so
control. Go.
Danny, let me ask you, being a child in the 21st century, was everything better in the past?
Yeah. It's so funny. I do think this is a good question too, because it's like there's so much to it of like, how much does what is progress? How much does like the things that we have matter? Are they distracting us, making life harder? Because we always say life is in so many ways easier now than it's ever been. We have all this stuff that we can just access instantly. Food's like a secondary question. It's not even like on our minds all the time whether we're preparing it. But there's also a lot of stuff I think that we didn't struggle with before. Like I think that like mental health issues it seems like they've gotten worse, would be my guess, at least with like all the technology and connectedness. You know, you're aware of all the stuff going on all over the world that's like overwhelming. We're also, destroying the environment. That's problematic potentially. It's just in a lot of ways, it also seems more chaotic because the world's bigger. In the past, I think it was smaller communities, smaller networks. You just couldn't talk to this many people or know what was going on around you. So I think there is that side. And I think people seem to pine for the past as like and imagine it better. But I do also personally, I think that's also false because I think it's a false, like it's something where we're like when we imagine that we'll be happy when we get X, Y, or Z, we imagine we'd be happier in the past at this specific time because it's like everything else. We're not there, so we just pretend or imagine that it would fix all of our problems if we were in a different place, existence, whatever. And I think that really gets to the issue that we have to deal with our problems because that's the only way to make us happy, not run from them or not hope to just be somewhere else, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely get nostalgic about stuff in the past. And when I look back, I agree with you. I can look back and be like, yeah, things were so much better then. But also, I can look back and be like, whoa, things were also way worse back then. Like the world was super violent back
Yeah.
then. Like
Yeah.
in Rome, the only way that political parties changed was by whoever was in power getting murdered. And like
Yeah.
all over the world, there was just war and murder and rape and all of these terrible things that, like, for the most part, we don't really have to deal with. But on the other hand, we take a look at it, like we were more connected with nature. We were more of our instinctual selves. Like when we feared things, they were actual, tangible, physical things as opposed to these like fears that we can't even grasp anymore that we have to deal with. And that could
Yeah.
be causing some of the mental issues that we have. So there's like,
Yeah.
it all depends how you look at it. And I think part of it is like how you look at it actually tells a little bit about yourself, maybe.
No, I think that's true too. And I think, just to add to that too, like, we also know about like viruses and bacteria and stuff and sanitation, which is also good. But yeah, no, I think too, like, with like this type of question, I think the more important question is like, well, if we think the world would be better at a different time, how can we make it better now? I think that's a better thing to ask is like, well, then how can I make either my life, my community, my world that I live in, how can I make it better now so that I don't need to think about going to a different time? Do you know what I mean? I think that's a better way to look at this is like,
Mm.
what are we doing wrong now, or what can we do now to make it improve it?
Mm. And also looking at the question. So like
Yeah,
when
too.
we have the thought that the world was better in the past, how do we feel when we have that thought? Generally not very good. And so like, is it
Yeah.
true that the world was better in the past? Who knows? You can't compare it. But
No.
that one simple thought can make you feel terrible. So why would you hang on to that thought? It's kind of a crazy thing. But also another thing is like looking at yourself. So like we talk about this a lot in like looking at progress because it's easy to compare yourself to other people and feel defeated. But
I
then
was
when you
just gonna
step
talk.
back, yeah, but then when you step back and compare yourself to yourself like 5 years ago, you're like, whoa, look at the progress that I've made. So I think that's also an important thing because if you look at it on that, was everything better in the past? I would say, heck no, things are way better now.
Yeah. No, that's a good point too, because I think that is fundamentally what's at the heart of the question, right? Is it's a problem of comparisons and making the wrong type. And we need to start making the right kind and train ourselves to make the right kind. So that's good. Yeah. You want to add
Mhm.
anything else to that answer?
Nope. Next question.
All right, next question. Do you want me to go in order or do we jump around?
Up to you.
All right, I'm gonna jump around a little because I'm just
Mhm.
curious. Um, what is the biggest problem in human nature? Randy, answer that right now.
Oh.
I want to know.
Yeah. Okay. So how about this? Uh, it's the belief that that we're all messed up and everyone else has it all sorted.
That's not bad. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love questions about human nature too because I'm always like, well, wait, what is human nature? Like, what is human nature to begin with? Are we talking about like our biological nature? Are we talking about like, I don't know, some nature like philosophers used to, as in like rational beings? Are we talking about, I don't know, you know?
I think uh the one that I said, I definitely think that's important, but I truly think that one of the biggest problems in human nature is the belief that things should be different from what they are. It causes us so much suffering, so much anguish, so much turmoil, so much pain thinking that things should be different from what they are, as opposed to just kind of accepting them as they are.
Can I counter that real quick though?
Sure.
I would say that I think though that yeah, I guess it's a belief, but I think dissatisfaction in seeing things problematic is also a way that we do improve things, change, grow, and also see things that we can make different. So I think that is important.
Oh,
And I
100%.
do,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. I would actually also add too, I think one of the biggest problems is that we think we're in competition with each other and that we have to win and everybody else has to lose rather than
Mm,
we could all potentially win. I think that is our biggest flaw, that we view it as competition rather
hmm.
than as, looking for ways where we could all actually like, because it's funny. I was thinking about this just the other day. Like, why do we why do we make it where people are depressed and all do like commit suicide? Have all these horrible things. Like, why are we trying to stop that? Like, why do we accept a world like that? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to ask for answers. I'm just saying, I think that's our biggest flaw. Yeah, in human nature.
Yeah, that's a great one. And it's a difficult question to answer, like why do we get so competitive? Because I know it's like I know from like school and everything, it's kind of like uh
Yeah, it's drilled into you, you know?
yeah, it's drilled into you. I'm curious if it's something that we have by nature that we're competitive. Because I think I don't have really much experience with children, but like if I think back and from what I read in books, they always talk about how children are, generally cooperative. They generally want to help other people. They enjoy doing
Yeah.
that stuff. I mean, but there are also children having tantrums and stealing toys from each other. So maybe we are competitive. But I just remember like one of the most defining moments in my educational life was when I got to vet school. And the school that I went to, they spent the whole first week. This was the only school that did this, but the whole first week it was just built on team building activities. So we got
Oh,
comfortable
that's
with
awesome.
everybody in our class, and they sat us down the first day and they said, you needed to be competitive to get here. It's very hard to get into vet school. You needed to be competitive to get here. Now that you're here, we have enough diplomas for all of you. So you don't need to be
Dude,
competitive at all. It's time to help each other.
yeah, every graduate program can learn a lesson from that. Because it's the dumbest practice of making students compete for stuff because you just make it miserable and you make people not want to work together. And then they look at everybody else, your colleagues, as your enemies. And I think it is funny. And I always wondered, is it like, maybe, okay, you could maybe argue, I don't know, maybe part of it's animal nature, whatever, wanting to have enough secure and whatever. But I think a lot of it is societal, like indoctrination, socialization, all that. Like you said, school and stuff, you have to be the best, you have to be the top, which means If you are, nobody else is. It's always that like idea that like I have to win, and the way I value myself is by comparing myself to others and seeing how much more I have. And I think that's a really big flaw because the world would be
Well,
way,
it's like
okay.
it's a different model of the world. It's like a competitive model of the world versus a creative model of the world. And
Yeah.
I think with technology, it's definitely made the understanding of a creative model of the world where like I can create something out of thin air that can impact everyone's lives, make everyone's lives better, and then everybody benefits from it. Whereas like before, you were like, oh, there's only so many ideas in the world, only so many potential
Yeah.
businesses. Like I need to compete, I need to get mine to be the best before somebody else could be the best. And so like it's a totally different mental model.
Yeah, I also think it's a people like to say too that like, well, if you didn't have the competition, what would motivate you? And I think that's a false idea too, tied to the socialization. Like I think that we would be motivated anyway to do things because people are always going to want to change the world. They're always going to make things different. They're always going to create, I think we're creative beings. We would always want to make new things. So I think
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of other ways to do it, but we have a hard time, or at least a lot of people have a hard time imagining something different from the world that they take for granted. And I think, it is troubling. It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like with the motivation. It's like, are you being pulled there or are you being pushed there? Like, are you doing it
Yeah.
because you feel like you need to do it because you're fearful, because whatever, or are you doing it because it's really what inspires you, what lights you up? And the
Yeah.
results you get from that are totally different.
Yeah, they are. Not to mention whoever, the people that originally like came up with this model probably had a lot of stuff and were winning. So if it was a beneficial model for them, they had, you know, it was kind of like, they had that self-interest to promote it. And so, I think there's other factors as well that we could consider. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So great question
All right.
and great
Cool.
answer. My next one, does social media make us sick?
I have a feeling you're gonna, I think this is a good one too. It's funny how like I don't know when TikTok was created, but it's funny how fast they blow up. Like one catches on, and I don't even know why they catch on. Like certain ones do, certain ones don't. Some fail or whatever. And then it just blows up. I mean, it's like, billions of people I think use it, right? Like daily or something. It's insane. And it's one of those things where I think it's not the thing itself. I never I'm of a firm belief that it's never the object itself that really makes us sick. It's our relationship to it. Like I think social media can play a lot of positive roles. I think it's, in many respects, like it can help small businesses get their word out. It can be a means to communicate with people. It can be a way to, be creative and put yourself out there and, let other people see it. But it also has a lot of built-in addictive stuff. I mean, it also has people in the company who are motivated by money, paying a lot of money to very intelligent people to figure out ways to make you stay there, using your emotions and stuff. So, I mean, there are a lot of things built into it that are problematic, maybe, but I think it's more our relationship to it. And again, like even as a society, because I think we don't really take a critical look at technology very often. Like, like Twitter. I remember when it first came out, the news immediately was like, oh, look who tweeted blah 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 about this thing. It's like they just immediately adopt it instead of maybe asking further questions about it and its impact. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I think sometimes we have to step back and maybe look at it and ask, well, how does it influence me individually? Is it a problem in life? Is it making me sick? And then more broadly, like, what do we want this to do for us? And like, is this the right way to do it? Or, because I think, at its core, I don't think communication's bad.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. My answer was
Yeah.
a absolute resounding yes. Like
Yes. Yeah.
there are so many things that have a fewer ROI negative than social
Yeah.
media. Like I was talking with my friend the other day and he was like, "Do you use social media?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Why not?" I was like, listen, there's like so many fewer things that have like negative correlations. Like social media, they've shown like you're more likely to be depressed. You're more likely
Yeah.
to like have attention problems. Like all these different things, they're all negative things. It's not like if you're using social media, hey, there's like a 70% chance you could get healthier, but it's like they don't have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
They don't have that. It's like
Yeah.
all terrible things. It's the latest like publicly okay addiction to have that's just completely detrimental to your life. but people say, "Oh, but I'm staying connected."
Well, yeah, I guess I should say that like I do agree with you, and I think all I was trying to say was like the idea behind it I don't think is necessarily problematic, but the problem is that like the way we've gone about it is we have these, companies that are very like they dominate the market. They're making tons of money off people, and so they have reason to make people just stay on their phone forever and never do anything else. So yeah, I think in that sense it's terrible. It is in that sense.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
there but it's like all technology. I think there's ways where like, that communication's good. There's ways that we could use it better, but I think this is the problem that we don't ever address it. We just like we do the easy thing all the time. It's like
Hmm.
security with technology. Like we take the easier option of making it really not that secure so that
Hmm.
it's convenient. It's problematic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, next
All
question.
right. Next question. Um, Hold on, let me find a good one. Hmm. Do you believe in God or a higher power in the universe?
Absolutely 100% yes.
Yeah?
And here's why. For a long time in my life, I was trying to do it all by myself, and things just weren't working out. And then once I was just like, all right, well, let's try. Because I'm of the mentality that like I'm willing to give anything a try and
Yeah.
see if it works for me. Because I know it's like if it works for me, I'll use it. If it doesn't work for me, okay, fine.
Great
So
attitude.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I tried it on. I tried it on, and it worked unbelievably amazing for me. Like better than anything I could have imagined. And so yeah,
Or are
100%
you
yes,
saying
that's
that
why.
are you saying it's just like a belief that things will work out? Is that what you mean by God or higher power? Or like what do you mean by it?
Well,
If you don't
I
mind me
think
asking, you
I
don't have to be
think
specific, but
okay,
yeah.
so I think for each person it's going to be different
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's like God is a word, you know? So like but like you say you say that word, I have a different interpretation of it, you have a different interpretation of it. Some people have like negative associations with it, all of these different types of things. So it's going to be different for other people, but all I know was that once I believed that it wasn't completely 100% up to me, then all of a sudden like everything opened up.
Oh, okay. Okay. That makes sense. That's interesting. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it is interesting because I think, I mean, I always personally, I mean, I'm of the belief that we don't know that much. There's so much we don't know. So I have no problem with, like you said, trying things out, seeing what works for you. I have no issue with that. And I like to be open-minded because I think it's important. And I've actually studied a lot of like religion, mythology, all that stuff throughout my life. So do I believe in God or a higher power? I don't know. I actually have no real like answer to this. I would say generally I lean towards not in the sense of like how religions have portrayed it, definitely not. But like maybe in a sense of like energy or something like that, or like, like you were referring to maybe like some causality type mechanism or something behind things. I wouldn't call it maybe intelligent, but that's me. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I also one thing that I find really interesting is like so there's we can't prove that we're not living in a simulation.
Nope.
So like but like one thing that I really like is going back and reading the Bible and seeing like in the Old Testament God's just acting like very, very angry. He's like, "You upset me. I'm gonna wipe out your whole population." And I think back to like a child who's just like created something, and it's like, "Stupid humans, why did you do this? I'm gonna kill all of you." And then like comes
That
back
doesn't
in the
look like
New
a duck.
Testament, comes back in the New Testament. And he's like, "I love all of you. You're awesome. I forgive you for everything." And it's like after he went to some type of like Zen retreat, he comes back and he's just like, "It's all cool. We're good."
We know what happened was when it started, he was a tribal god, and he had to like battle other tribal gods and stuff and be the one. His people had to be great, and
Mhm.
then he became a universal god, and he took a chill pill and took a step back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Basically,
so
it is funny, isn't
it's
it?
yeah, it's a great question. But yeah. All right. So next question,
All right.
and this is an important one. I think we have a lot of experience in this area.
Oh, what is
What would you like to change about the school system?
it about the school system?
I
Oh man, that's like a whole episode.
know,
I
right?
okay, honestly, like I'm gonna just talk. I'm just gonna say about the U.S. just because I don't want to make it too difficult. So we have like public school, private schools, all these different things for like lower education. Then we have colleges, right? I would really like to see fundamental changes. We have not changed education really at all and like since we started it and formalized it. Yes, we've added technologies, but we only use them in really an intermediary role. They don't play any real role in like making it different. And I think we live in an age now where like I think people might specialize in something, but they don't know enough broadly either. Like I think you need a broad foundation, but I also think you need real practical skills. So if you wanted like specific answers, I think we should make public schools like, for younger kids have a better universal kind of curriculum where everybody has access to the same stuff. So the opportunity is equal from the starting point, not by like district, not by community, not by like so area, you know, if one area is really wealthy, their school's way better, you know, and has more stuff. It shouldn't I don't think it should be like that. I also think we should start focusing on teaching a much broader range of stuff. Particularly, I think we should teach kids how to think critically, ethics, how to be a good person or the good life, so they can start thinking about themselves in terms of like development and growth. And I think we should start, you know, especially maybe in high school or college, start doing more incorporation with like apprenticeships again of some sort, or making more agreements with like something like that where you don't do as much abstract theorizing as you would also combining that with practical hands-on experience. Because I think we lack the practical side completely. And I think we produce people that can critically think and that have no way to solve problems that every human suffers with, like how to grieve, how to deal with your emotions, how to have a good relationship, how to be a good person. Like most people can't answer those questions, and we need a way to do that. So I think that needs to be part of it. That's my shortest answer I can
Yeah,
give.
those are some great suggestions. A couple of things that I thought of. One, I think school should be optional. I don't think you should
Oh,
have to go to school as a
oh,
child. I think that's the biggest because you have all these people who are forced to be there who don't want to be there. So I think 100% it should be optional. Uh, Second, I think that what is it? Oh yeah, we need to like get rid of the classics. Like cut them out of the curriculum because they're garbage. They literally, I still like, we both read a ton of
yeah.
books and I still try to
Wait,
read the classics and they're garbage.
you mean just to be explicit, you're not talking about like really classic philosophers. You're talking about like the
The
Scarlet
Scarlet
Letter.
Letter.
Yeah,
Yeah. Scarlet
particularly.
Letter, Canterbury Tales, like those types of things that every child has to read.
Oh,
And it's like, it turns people off to reading because you're reading garbage and it's not even intelligible.
oh, you know what? One other thing too.
Mm.
Let kids select what they want to read so that they're
Yes.
making choices because I think that's good. And I also think I thought I was thinking about this the other day, but like especially young kids, letting them pick a project at the beginning of the year, something that they would have to work on, research, figure out, learn skills, and then produce something and then do it and facilitate it. That would be awesome. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Empower the learner so that people can learn to learn on their own because they can. And I think we do it in a way where people feel like they can't learn without somebody instructing them, but you really don't need that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in addition to what you were talking about with a philosophical education, because that's very, very practical, how to live the good life, I think also very important, a financial education. And I'm not talking about
Oh yeah,
accounting
definitely.
because accounting is
Yeah.
BS and nobody needs to learn that. But what I'm talking about is like have them read Rich Dad Poor Dad or have them learn how to make a budget and how to live off
Yeah.
of a budget. Something
Yeah.
like that that's actually practical that could make an impact in their life. Have them run the numbers for if they start investing $5 today or $5 a month today, how much they'll have when they're 67. Like every kid wants to be a millionaire, but if you show them, if they just put $5 a month away now in an S&P index fund, guess what? By the time they're 67, they will be a millionaire. It's guaranteed. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, so instead of we teach them all this garbage that's useless and then the actual important things. And I think part of that is like the teachers unions. Now, I don't know exactly, but in Steve Jobs biography, he was talking about how he's like one of the biggest things holding back the education system is the teachers unions. And now, like I said, I don't know this, but it kind of resounds because with the teachers unions, it's not performance based pay. So like everything else, you go to jobs anywhere else, you're basically your performance is important. But as a teacher, if you get tenure, then no longer need to perform.
let me say this, and I
Yeah,
do know a fair amount about the union, but I would
because
say
I'm
that
also
like
talking about something that I don't know. So I
no, that's
also
fair.
say,
I mean, look, I have issues with the union myself, actually, and I think I think it's there for a reason right now because the administrations and the townships and stuff. Otherwise, it would be worse. So I think it is there for a reason. But I also think that, like, yes, schools, and it's very slow to adopt new things because they don't have funding or they're not allowed to because they have the parents dictating what they can do. So I think, yeah, I think we need more essentially freedom and self-learning and empowering people to learn on their own. And I think, yeah, I think there's so much we should change. I think it's ridiculous that it hasn't changed. And like to the point you were making, like, yeah, back 50 years ago, I couldn't just Google stuff and find it out. But now I can. So I don't really need to know the list of presidents. I don't give a rat's ass because I can look up the presidents whenever I want, if I ever needed to actually know a president's name. I can also look up maps of the entire world. I can also get the geolocation of anywhere. So starting to think more carefully about what facts can I actually access versus what stuff can I not. And what I can access is how to answer open-ended questions, how to think critically, how to actually develop skills, how to actually, things about how to actually live my life. And I think that's what we should be focusing on. Because the
hmm
learning part, people can learn. They just got to be interested in something, and it's not that big of a deal. And I
yeah,
think, having it more like individual directed would be awesome. Yeah.
hmm yeah, absolutely.
All right.
All right,
Good.
next
Yeah, that
question.
was fun. All right. I like this one, so I'm going to ask you anyway. So, what should the goal of humanity be? I like really
Mm.
big questions like this. But yeah, go ahead.
This is a funny one. Uh, so that question is kind of similar to, uh, what's the meaning of life?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, kind of similar. So my response to what's the meaning of life is filling holes.
That's a good one. I like that.
Because it's like, if you look at it,
It's
what do we do?
very
We're always trying to fill holes. Like, we're eating, we're filling holes. We're breathing, we're filling holes. We're having sex, we're filling holes. But it's also like all these motivations that we have. We
we
want to be
identify
happy. We're
problems.
filling a hole within ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's like all these different things that we do, we're filling holes. I think it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek answer to what's the meaning of life.
No, I
Um,
like that one,
I,
man.
for let me okay, so I'll give a little bit more of, I guess, a realistic answer. So, part of I think there's like, for me, there's two things. What's the meaning of life? So one is like procreation, and there's the biological sex part of that, which is just like continuing whatever. But there's
Yeah,
also like
more G.
the creating something, the creation. So like adding value. So there's that side of it. I believe that's one side of what's the meaning of life, and I believe the other side is whatever right now. This is this
Life.
because
This thing called
right
life. Yeah.
because there's never anything other than this.
Yeah.
Future and past are
Isn't
constructs
that
of our
weird? It's true
imagination.
though.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, those are my answers.
Well, it's funny. I saw this and it just made me think of something because like um Nietzsche had this really interesting view that like, he thought uh like basically the Western world, modern world was degenerating. And he looked back to the past and he romanticized the past, like ancient Greek, he's thinking about like ancient Rome, Egypt. But he looked back at these old cultures which were very small, semi-homogeneous, and he also saw that they tended to have like unifying projects that were achievements. So like the pyramids, the Parthenon, like they were very much organized around these greater like achievements that spoke of the culture itself. And I did think that was interesting to think about that we are very disorganized now in that respect because we are competing with each other rather than like community. So I do wonder like should if humanity had like a goal, right, in some sense, like I think he would say would be to make ourselves higher, to raise ourselves up, to become better than we are now, whatever that means. And I think that's an interesting way to look at it. Like if we had a goal like solving the problems that are in our way, right? Making human beings a better thing than they are now, rather than just doing the same thing over and over again. That would be one way I would answer it to.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. And I think one of the things that stops a lot of people from actually doing that is being like, yeah, we're destroying the environment and nobody's doing anything about it. I give up.
Yeah,
And it's just like,
exactly. They should
Yeah.
fix it, not me.
Yeah, yeah. Why isn't the president doing anything about this? Yeah, exactly. So it's like, but it's like understanding the personal responsibility of it, because having the thought that anything outside of you is going to change anything is just
Yeah,
craziness. It's absurd.
yeah,
It's you know,
it is.
but like if you just look at yourself, like how am I making a difference? Am I improving? Am I getting better? Are my relationships getting better? All of that stuff. If you're doing all that stuff, then you're making probably close to the best impact you can make in the world.
I like that. Yeah, be the example. Yeah, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Be part of the
Yeah.
solution. All right.
All right. So my next one, this is actually a curious one. Why are people jealous?
That's a good one.
Like, why is jealousy? Why do humans have a an emotion of jealousy? Why are people jealous?
I think it is a good question because I mean, jealousy is interesting too because it's not like necessarily beneficial to the person that feels it. It hurts. It makes us feel worse. It makes it feel less than. Um, in some, I think this. All right, I'm just gonna say this is my view, but I think this goes back to like the way we're raised to kind of compete with each other. It's supposed to be sort of semi-motivating, but it becomes turned against us because we feel like we're lacking. We feel like we can't do what others are doing. We feel like we don't have enough. We feel like we're not good enough. And so instead, that turns against us. Instead of acting in the world, doing something, changing our lives, we pity ourselves and we feel bad about ourselves. And then we start like, focusing in on what others have and being upset about it, and it sucks. And I think we all suffer with this. It's terrible. And this goes back to making comparisons the wrong way, right? Comparing ourselves against others without looking at the whole, without looking at the whole picture, instead of just looking at ourselves and how we're doing. But I think we all struggle with this because it is so easy, dude, to be like, I don't have enough money to pay my bills, and then just instantly look somewhere else and be like, they have so much excess, blah, and it's like you get upset, but and it's understandable, but at the same time, I think it's really just problematic. Like I don't know where it comes from, but yeah, that's at least part of my answer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you mentioned, the idea that there's not enough to go around. Like
Yeah,
somehow that there's not enough in this infinite universe, somehow there's not enough. And like I think, like jealousy, I was trying to think like where does it come from being a baby to an adult? And it could even start like as early as we're a child, because no matter what sex you're born as a child, if you're a girl, you want your dad's attention, but he splits his attention between you and your mom. So like already you're competing for his attention. And if
yeah,
you're a boy, it's the same thing with your mom and your dad. So like no matter where you are, there's already this jealousy thing that like I can't have enough of what I want when I want it. So it just sets you up for trouble there.
yeah. It's almost like learning that I can't have everything, so I need to learn how to deal with what I have or appreciate what I have. But instead of doing that, we just go the opposite direction. It
Yeah.
might also be a group thing too, like one community looking at another and being, well, they have more than us, and like, attacking them or something because they feel like the grass is greener on the other side, right? It's also like that
Yeah.
belief, I think this ties into a lot of things, maybe like that belief that things were better in the past or that they're, whatever.
And it's kind of crazy because like it's a very like heated, momentary, present emotion
Oh
that
yeah.
once I have a moment to think about it, I'm like, this doesn't make sense because like if it's a relationship with a girl and she wants someone else, it's like, but I actually want her happiness. So if she wants to be with somebody else, that actually logically makes sense to me. Or like if it's with somebody who has something that I want, it's like, yes, but I want them to have that because I want to have the ability to have that. Like if they can do it, then I can do it. So why am I being jealous about this?
Yeah, you know what's funny? It is funny because like I have that experience all the time where I feel it, like where it's like it doesn't even feel like me. Do you know what I mean? Like it's weird, but it can be so strong and in a sense it almost feels like it comes out of the blue sometimes. Where like it takes a minute to like both register what's happening, why I feel this way, and then like course correct away from it and like deal with it. And it's like it's funny because I think that's how it hits a lot of people, but like it's amazing how our emotions can almost overtake us in a way where we become like what we're not, It's really strange.
Hmm. Yeah, we become a monster
Yeah.
when, yeah, sometimes.
All right.
Yeah.
Um,
Last
Should we
question,
do,
Danny.
you want to do one more? All right.
Sure. I found a funny one.
I'm gonna do the last one. All right.
Okay.
Wait, am I asking this one? Right?
Yeah, yeah. I did find a funny one though. I'll just suggest it if you want to find another one, we can just do
Go ahead.
another one.
What did you find? Go ahead.
What is a recipe for unhappiness?
Oh, that's a good one. You want to do it?
Yeah.
All right. I like that as the last one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, you start because I should have asked the question. So go ahead.
Okay. What is a recipe for unhappiness? Okay, so I think that a recipe for unhappiness is uh number one, thinking that happiness exists somewhere outside of where you are right here and right now. And then part two is social media and or traditional news media.
Yeah,
You you avoid those three things and you will be set.
I like that because it's like focusing on outside of yourself, right? Rather than internally. Yeah, I would say like, a recipe for unhappiness is believing that you don't have the power to change yourself.
Mm,
Um, you know, or believing that you don't have control over what you really have control over, like your mind, your, emotions and all. I think that is super important. Um, Believing that you're not good enough, believing that you
mm.
can't do something. And I think negativity essentially is a recipe for unhappiness because it sets you up for failure rather than for success. Yeah.
That's a great point that you brought that up because there's that book Learned Optimism by Martin Seligman where he was talking about learned helplessness, how in animals it's identical to depression. So like the belief that we can't do something, that we don't have control, that we don't have agency makes us depressed. And every time in my life that I've been depressed, it's because
Yeah.
I believed that I couldn't change, that I couldn't get something that I wanted or do something that I wanted.
Yeah. The actual study from the old study was that they actually took dogs, they made it so they couldn't leave this pen, and then they would electrify the floor. They would try to get out at first, but once they realized they couldn't get out, then they would give up and be like, but you're right there. That's exactly how you feel. You feel like one of those dogs when it happens. And it's like it totally makes you forget that no, you can change things. You just have to start doing it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that was one of the hardest things when I was really depressed was like reminding myself that I still had agency and I can still make things happen. And like it started with little things and I just built on it. And then, you can go from there. It
Mm-hmm.
actually is really amazing. But yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just like changing little things. Like it's because we get stuck in like the explore exploit
Oh,
part. We get
yeah.
stuck in that exploit part because it's comfortable, you know? And then we think like that's the only way that things could work. But sometimes you just have to explore, try new things, change it up.
You remind me too. I think another recipe for unhappiness is believing that happiness is a perpetually joyous state. I think that is the worst. Yeah. Like no bad things happen. There's no change. There's no emo. I think that's just like one of the things. Somehow we all internalize that, and I don't know how, but like that's not life. Yet we
Hmm.
have this like fake view of it. It's really weird. It is strange.
Yeah, okay. So like so funny thing. So I was listening to this book. I mean, that's a great point, and this is just adding to that point.
Yeah.
But like so I was listening to this book do Epic SH Star T, and he's talking about how like all life is change. And we get stuck in all these problems because we want things to stay the same. And then at the end of the book, he has a section on love. And so he's like writing these notes to people in his family. He's like, I love you, you're so creative, never change. Stay this way always. And it's just like it's so funny because like we want
Never
things to
change.
stay the same when they're
Yeah.
good and we want them to change when they're bad, but like it's just the whole world's in a constant state of flux, always changing.
It is, dude. It's in a constant state of flux, and it's funny because we want this permanence that doesn't exist. And personally, I think when it comes to happiness, I like to think of it as good life instead of happiness because it clears my mind of that idea of feeling joy, feeling pleasure all the time, and instead it makes me focus more on like success, the relationships, mental health, physical health, all that stuff as being more important. And I think once you have
Hmm.
that, the other stuff comes with it.
Yeah, like it's like can I have 80% good life, something like that. That way when
Yeah,
you have a bad day, you're just like, hey, it's just a bad day, not a bad
they
life.
happen.
I'm,
Yeah,
I'm okay.
exactly.
They happen.
Yeah,
Sweet. Well, this has been
awesome.
a lot of fun. I gotta say,
That
I
was
love
fun.
doing these. I love doing these
I do
lists
too.
because they have great questions and
Yeah.
always great answers. So, anyways, everybody, this is the Existential Stoic podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't yet, check us out on the podcasting services. We're also on YouTube where you could check out both of our pretty faces. Uh,
Yeah.
make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And we will see you guys later in the week. I'm
Woo.
Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Amy.